Talked about earlier in the week how God is not a magician, but a scientist. Coffee. Great work, God the scientist. And in fact, in our social statements and stuff, we talk about God has given us dominion over creation. We're charged to care for it. Stewardship, right? Um, yeah, plants and what we eat has changed so much because we've cultivated those things. God has shown us how to continue the story of creation, right? Like an evolution of sorts, right? Okay. Don't need to go back to that again. But today, I submit to you, there's a passage with Jesus that I am fond of that shows us that God's work is science. Maybe not even always a exact science. Let's go to Mark chapter 8. Mark chapter 8. My Bible is loading currently. Okay, there we go. We have this great passage here. Keep going, it's 4,000. I have, starting in verse 22, Mark 8:22, Jesus cures a blind man at Bethsaida. And let's read. They came to Bethsaida. Some people brought a blind man to him and begged him to touch him. Jesus looked at the blind man, took the blind man by the hand and led him out of the village. And when he put saliva in his eyes and laid his hands on him, he asked, "Can you see anything?" And the man looked up and said, "I can see people, but they look like trees walking." Then Jesus laid his hands on his eyes again. He looked intently, and his sight was restored, and he saw everything clearly. Then he sent him away to his home, saying, "Do not even go into the village." Interesting, this story. It's only Mark, the first gospel written. It's interesting how their gospel writers didn't feel a need to include it. Did Jesus make a mistake the first time? I think if I had this old TV from my video games growing up, and you had to do, kids never these days will never understand, right? You have to tune into the right channel. Yes, the knob. And it was funny that piece of junk sometimes it would kind of get stuck in between channels, and you have to give it a little slap on the top there. Not too hard, just a little, it didn't fix itself, right? Clear the picture up. Kind of see that with what's happening here. Jesus does this healing action, and it's kind of fuzzy. It's a little pop, little pat on the head. All right, so Jesus then again goes and fixes it. This isn't magic; it's science. Sometimes science isn't always exact. I don't think God made a mistake. I think God was fine-tuning the science on the fly, perhaps showing us that we too can learn and grow and have this ability to heal, right? But we're going to have times where it needs to be fine-tuned. We're not always going to get right the first time. I think it's an intentional showing. Jesus has led this man out of the village for people to see. They don't have to be part of the village to see this, right? This is an intentional act of God. I wonder if Jesus is showing us the scientific process, perhaps. Yes, we have saliva and gross, spitting in his eyes, right? But it's God. I mean, but maybe there's ways to heal blindness that are certain chemical compounds that Jesus was able to produce because, he's God. Maybe he's working with the nerves. Getting the nerve connection all the way. I don't know, I'm not a scientist, but I'm just thinking this through. God is, and the scientific process is not perfect. I remember from my lab reports in school and college, having to go through the various steps of how we did everything, why we did everything, and blah, 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 because it's not exact. You have to get rid of confounding variables. God's done this work, but we're invited to make the world a better place, not through an exact science either, but in a process, in multiple tries. See, living out our faith, doing science, curing blindness or other diseases. I was thinking curing cancer. It's not impossible. We'll get there. It's going to take a couple tries, though. Anything's possible with God, even if it takes more than one try. Jesus shows us that today. Try something that you failed at once before. Give it another try today. With God, anything's possible.